Hello YouTube, Robin Hood Bricks here, and last time I gave you the choice of whether you wanted me to work on the Fairground, on the undersea cabinet, 20,000 bricks under the sea, or something new, and quite frankly you all voted for something different, but I do think the majority voted for Fairground, wanting to see this massive project completed. We've integrated almost all of the rides so far, and it's looking pretty good, but one of the major problems that remains is the battery box situation. As many of you will know, I started concealing all of my battery boxes in caravans just to kind of hide them from sight, but make them very easily accessible to sort of turn on and off whole sections of my fairground. But essentially doing that with all of the battery boxes that I've got, which is sort of 5 here, plus a dedicated one that's already hidden in my Dodgems ride, just seems a bit repetitive. And I'm all about diversity in my city, so having 5 caravans on top of the ones sort of on the window ledge and so on, and the ones concealing motors, just seems far too much for me. So I thought I'd come up with another solution. And to be honest, having sort of hinted at this last time, a lot of you guessed it. It's basically to include a row of portaloos, or porta potties as they call them in the US, and I thought this would be a really good way of hiding the 3 remaining boxes. Now I don't think I'll have them there. I think I'll tuck them into a more sort of useless corner, maybe over here for example, and the idea being that there'll be some sort of play feature button we can kind of push on the top of the porta potty or whatever it might be, and that will push the button underneath and set a whole section of the fairground whirring. So that is the idea, but there is an added complication in that because I use all of my rechargeable battery boxes, I also need to leave the recharging kind of port here freely accessible. So I do want to be able to either lift something very convenient off to free up that hole, or, well, something similar anyway. So that is the challenge. So first of all, I guess I need 3 porta potties, and I think we need to go down to the build desk. Okay, so 3 rechargeable battery boxes. Don't need the turning things now. 3 wonderful portaloos from the set 60073 service truck from 2015. I didn't buy that set 3 times or anything. In fact, I don't even have it once, but what I did was basically buy the sticker sheet 3 times for these wonderful WC type signs, and, well, get the bits to make my own. And oh, this one's slightly ajar. Oh, golly, you weren't supposed to see that. I do apologise. Hopefully he's finished. Put him back on his stand. Yeah, so we can get the build going now. So essentially the technique I'm going to use, I think, is much the same as on my fast white passenger train, where you can have kind of a separate section that pivots just on a very small connection on the back of the power functions kind of connector there, and kind of hovers above the power button, and just by using the little flex that is in Lego when it's only attached at one end, turn on, you'll see the green light there, and off the switch. And it does that just by having an appropriately placed kind of boat tile on the back end of that. So that's what I'm going to do here essentially, and I'm going to add a boat tile onto the underside of that, and essentially have that hovering above the button there, so I can kind of press it and turn on the switch. And then by removing the whole portaloo temporarily from its position, I'll gain access to that charging port as we said earlier. So basically this will be very loosely connected but pivoting around, and I think that's better than kind of turning the top into a button that goes all the way through it. I think that would just be too over-engineered essentially. So this is my kind of mock-up for upstairs in the Lego room. I'm going to have 3 spaces for my battery boxes, and I'm going to have them quite close because I don't want all of this scene taking up, you know, half of my fairground. And another thing I have to consider when doing all this is basically the fact that all of these green plates are very limited in their variety. There aren't many different ones. So essentially I've had to try and find a combination of battery boxes and pieces of bright green plate that can join together to make, well, a size that's divisible by kind of 16 by 16 or 8 by 16, so it fits in with all the other stuff. So essentially I'm going to have kind of like that. And I've got a few more to fill in these gaps, but I won't do that immediately because I'm just going to add, as opposed to bringing one of the rides down, a set of power functions lights so we can see this kind of in operation. I'll just have them maybe shoved in some Technic holes here so we can see it working a bit more visually when we've covered everything else up. So essentially I'm just going to do that, have that there. See, these 6x4s, they only come without the majority of the studs on. You can't actually get a normal 4x6 plate in bright green. So that is my sort of unbroken ground with these sticking out the top. And the reason why I've got the height like that is because my cavity is 3 brick height deep. So essentially, well, this is proud, which isn't ideal. You can see that is working as it stands with my finger. It's not ideal having these proud, but I don't think there's any other way of doing it. I don't want to make it like a hill to put the portaloos on. So I figure I could try and incorporate that into the design. So first of all, I want to have some steps up to the portaloo. I'm going to do that just by using dark tan plates in a variety like that. And I'm planning to have much more paths in this colour around the whole fairground, so maybe it'll be a bit more integrated later on. But that gives us that little lip, in a way, to have our one with the boat tail on the bottom just sort of perched on those last 4 studs. And that, if we watch the light, means that I can turn it on and off just the same as if I was pressing it directly with my finger by pressing the top. And I think that's pretty subtle. So when I pull it off again, obviously we'll have access to the charging point. So that's working really well. So the only thing really left to do, apart from incorporate this into the Lego room, of course, is try and disguise all of this stuff. Now, the other complication is we do need a bit of space on the back for the cable to go down, of course, in between the top above the surface and below. So how I'm going to do that is just leave a little bit of space there and then add in a set of corner bricks, that was right, like that, and then add in a slope like that, because I figure each one of these would be attached to kind of a septic tank where all of the stuff goes, gets put in the top, where it's left to sort of decompose or at least be stored for removal later. So they would kind of partially bury a big tank, and that's what I'm trying to represent here. Now I'm not going to need to turn this dial at all, so I'm happy covering that up. So essentially I've just made a little sort of septic tank on the back, and I'm going to cover that using one of these 4x4s, but with the tiles, rather studs missing off the back. And I've moved one of these rather large tread plate stickers to sort of reflect a panel from some pieces that I was donated, actually. They were yellow originally in the sort of 6x4 size, but I figure that looks quite symmetrical and looks in isolation like it could be a partially submerged septic tank. So then when we put our portaloo on the front, I don't think that join is too unsightly. So we've got our functioning button. Yep, that's still working. And our septic tank. And now I can do the other two. So let me do that and we'll come back to it. And there are the other two attached as well. And I think they look really good, that distance apart, kind of closely packed, but you can still see the wonderful signs on the side from both directions. I only had 2 of those stickers that I moved using my patented hot tea technique. So I am in the market for a third one. I think they come in grey as well as yellow. So I've added both to my wanted list on bricks and pieces. So I think that's looking really good. And it's very subtle in turning things on and off. So I think I'll have a lot of wiring to do upstairs in sort of moving around the cable so they all reach the right place. But yeah, pretty simple so far. So I did think I'd want to augment this a little bit with some funny scenes, as you know what I like. So one option was basically to add a poop piece, but maybe that's a bit grim, I don't know. But you could put one in a bowl that hasn't been flushed properly or something like that. But I thought a similar idea, which might be a bit more in keeping with a fairground, was to add, first of all, a lime 1x1 kind of stud in there. And then I could use one of my many newly acquired sort of puddles of puke type pieces for somebody who's vomited in the toilet instead. And although that's pretty much just as grim, it's a bit more visual being all over the side there. I mean, that's horrid, isn't it? We've all been to a fairground or a sort of festival or something like that where you're presented with that sort of a sight when you finally get to the head of the queue. So yeah, I think that's a lot more funny than adding a poop. So there we go. So that can be one of them, and that could be perhaps open with somebody looking in distress. And then I also thought another scene you often see in this sort of environment is when all the fluid from the inside of the portaloo has kind of leaked, and it's often this very sort of dark blue colour. So I thought we could have kind of a dark blue, oh, golly, that's hard to push down, there we go, a fluid leak at the side of one, which is arguably just as grim, but very familiar sight. So kind of like that kind of looks relatively natural, and that would just add to the scene. So I think those two look rather good. And then the other one that I probably won't do today because it's going to involve lots of minifigures and laying them all out, making the scene look really complete. I want to have really long queues coming out from all of these with absolutely loads of minifigures, all looking very desperate, kind of like this guy, to go, because, well, these are pretty much the only toilets in the entire Brick Nottingham, because big fans of the channel will know I really don't like adding toilets to every building, because it's just not really very realistic. I mean, anyway, you'd have far more than just one at every sort of fourth building, so I just get rid of them entirely, essentially. I've even removed them from some of the modulars that they come in, and I definitely haven't added any to any of my personal builds. So maybe the joke here is that basically all these citizens of Brick Nottingham absolutely busting to go because, well, it's absolutely the only opportunity all year when the fairground comes to town. So I think that and these queues will make for some really fun scenes. And when this is all in, you can't see any of this nonsense underneath. I think it will be really quite seamless. Yeah, like it. Cool. Let's install this in the Lego room. Well, I've played with different placements of this, and I think this rough area is the best still. Basically, it's pretty ugly edge of the roller coaster there, so pushing them into this corner and having them relatively out of the way, but concealing nothing important is quite a good placement, I think. And I have added the poop piece right next to the blue liquid, so maybe it came out with that. Pretty grim scene, I think you'll agree, but rather unsurprising given the amount of very, very questionable fast food that's on sale in this fairground with its origins. If you haven't seen that video, that is quite good fun. So yeah, I'm going to get on with installing that, and I think I might have to swap around which sort of power box is powering what, because I think it'd make most sense if this whole section was being powered by one of those. This whole section at the front was powered by another, and probably the next section along. So that means I'm going to have to sort of take off all of the connections that are already on both of these caravans and move them around. And then the caravans will be powering this sort of side, and maybe I'll just have them sort of, you know, wherever there's a space available in due course. And you may wonder why this breakdown van is right in the middle of my fairground, and that's because it's the vehicle of the week, or rather two vehicles of the week, both from the City Square set. It's a really nice pickup truck with a winch and a sort of movable back bit and all the rest of it, so I'm just going to add that to the city's roads. Yeah, it's a really good vehicle from an absolutely fantastic set, which is the one with the tram in, of course, and so on. So that can be this week's vehicle of the week. Cool, right, I'm going to have to dig up half of this ground so I can get all the cables again and get these bad boys integrated. And there they are, all in position. Buried away, 3 septic tanks and some steps going up. And yeah, it's really seamless, isn't it? You just can't believe the myriad of wires that's hidden underneath there. Absolutely loads of them, just to cross the big spaces in between where they're connected and where they're powered. It's a good thing I bought a load of them, an absolute load of them, when they were still available from Lego and relatively good value, because now they go for crazy money. Anyway, so I've redone all of the battery boxes, which is why I've had to pull up all of this sort of area as well. So now we do have this being the corresponding area on the left with these 4 rides, and then I've got this one being this front area, which does have 2 on at the moment, but they're quite high powered, and that will be also powering on Ninjago ride in due course. And the third one is the next section along with these 4 things, 1, 2, 3, 4. So yeah, I think that works really well, which means that basically this one is currently powering this section over here, and that one is currently powering all of that section over there. And I'll worry about their position in a later video. Right, so I need to put the portaloos on there, the man who's a bit desperate for the loo in as well, and I think we'll have a great position for the end of the video. All right, well that is the scene fully integrated. And doesn't it look good? Absolutely seamless, with very subtle septic tanks behind. And you would never know that those are 3 power buttons for power boxes to power whole sections of rides. And that's exactly how I wanted it. Very subtle indeed. So yeah, I'm very happy with how those have turned out. And they are very removable, of course, for recharging purposes. So I've added another puddle of vomit just because I've got so much of it to go around that I'm feeling generous. And it also occurs to me that it's quite unrealistic for all of these to have a toilet roll in them, because usually these things run out very quickly, especially when they're done on a cheap by a criminal carny gang. So yeah, now most of this ground will go back very quickly. So we are really finishing off this ground level quite quickly. There's a little section here that we need to do where we need to incorporate our final motorised ride, and that will go, as I say, on this section of Power Grid. But I've started also thinking about finally incorporating the 2 power caravans, and I figured this small one would look very good sort of tucked in here, just around the corner, because I don't want it too visible, next to the DJ booth of the Dodgems, which I've taken off briefly just to do all this digging around, and that's enabled me to thread the cable in just a tiny hole there, you can see, by redoing all of the different pieces around here. And I'll be able to pull up the slack by pulling on this cable and then cover the hole with one of these curved slopes that I got recently to kind of conceal where the wire's coming out, and that'll be very up close so you won't see it at all. And that means I'll have 2 power switches, one for the Dodgems there and one for this whole front section right next to it, which I think will be really good. So I'll only have to finalise the position of that one and put in that final ride before we can completely seal the ground level for good, and then concentrate on putting in our paths, which I've just started laying a few out here, all around, our people, fast food, gypsy tents, all sorts of stuff, and it's going to look absolutely fantastic. So yeah, it feels like slow progress some weeks, but each part is integral to the whole. And I think today's part has been, wow, a real success. I really like it. It looks great. And I just thought I'd add all of the plates back, leaving just a very small hole just to give you the impression of what it's going to look like when we've got everything else in. I think it's looking really good. And I've tidied up this area, as I said, so that's looking really neat. And again, you wouldn't know that this was a power box for that whole section. So yeah, really loving that. So, as always, thank you very much for watching. It is appreciated. Do remember to like, comment and subscribe for more awesome LEGO videos. And if you value this channel, there are many ways in which you can support it. Do check out the links in the description below. And next time on Robin Hood Bricks, I think I'll be doing something in the cabinet, either amending all the submarines that are attached to our new undersea base, or extending it maybe, or maybe I'll do the final vessel for the surface. Who knows? And before that, of course, we've got a brick haul on Wednesday. And if you want to send a package, you can to the usual address, because I think it's going to be a subscriber donations one, which, wow, there's a few packages there. So I'm really looking forward to it. So until all of that, see you